You know that little niggle, that almost automatic comparison thing that happens when you're scrolling maybe through social media and you see someone else's win or, how happy they look, their new car, whatever it
Oh, wow.
is. Like a friend's amazing holiday pictures or a colleague announces something great. Even just seeing someone who seems really, really joyful, that feeling,
Right.
that tiny pinch of something.
It's such a human response, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of longing, but maybe mixed with a bit of frustration.
Mm.
And that's exactly what we're going to dig into in this deep dive. We're looking squarely at this, well, often pretty uncomfortable emotion, envy.
Right. But here's the really interesting part. The source material we're drawing on today, it's this great discussion about like personal growth and mindset. It actually suggests that this exact feeling, this envy thing that pretty much everyone feels sometimes, it can
Yeah.
actually be, believe it or not, a really powerful kickstart for positive change in your life.
Yeah, think of this as a focused look. We've sort of boiled down the main ideas to give you a clear picture of what envy actually is, where it comes from, and crucially, how you can shift, how to pivot from feeling, stuck comparing yourself to actually taking inspired action towards what you want.
Exactly. So our mission here for this deep dive is to really get under the skin of envy, figure out its roots, and give you some actual usable ways to take that, yeah, sometimes unpleasant feeling and turn it into real fuel for your own goals. Okay, so let's unpack this.
Okay, first things first, let's just get on the same page. The Oxford English Dictionary, it defines envy as a feeling of discontented or resentful longing aroused by someone else's possessions, qualities, or luck.
Hmm.
So it's that basic feeling of wanting something someone else has.
And it's so easy to confuse that with something more positive, like inspiration, isn't it? But the Macmillan Dictionary gives a really different definition for inspiration: a sudden feeling of enthusiasm or a new idea that helps you to do or create something. It feels totally different, much more like energetic and forward-looking.
And there's a huge difference in the belief underneath it all. Envy, it often comes from what people call a scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
That feeling that there's only so much good stuff to go around, opportunities, luck, whatever.
Mm.
So the thought is, if they have that, there's less for
Yeah.
me.
Like a zero-sum game.
Exactly. Whereas inspiration,
Hmm.
that comes from an abundance mindset, the belief that actually there is enough for everyone. So the thought becomes, wow, if they can do that or have that, then maybe it's possible for me too.
It almost feels physical, doesn't it? That envy feeling. The discussion we're looking at even talks about that, like a sudden tightness in your stomach, maybe,
Hmm.
followed by this mix of frustration, maybe a bit of anger, even sadness. I think, yeah, most of us can probably recognize that physical clue, like
Oh.
your body's flagging it.
Totally. Your system flags it as some kind of threat, almost.
Yeah.
And the things that trigger these feelings, well, they can be really direct. Like maybe a colleague gets the promotion you thought you deserved, or you see happy couple photos right after you've gone through a breakup. Obvious stuff. But what's really interesting, and what the source points out, is how often envy works in these much more subtle, almost insidious ways.
Ah, the undercurrent. Yeah, tell us more about those sneakier triggers.
Well, it's the everyday stuff, isn't it? The constant stream of comparisons we're often not even fully aware we're making. Social media is like the prime example, obviously. But it happens offline too. Seeing families that look perfect, successful friends, people who just seem to have everything we feel we're missing. It's that nagging feeling of just not quite measuring up somehow.
And social media really does get put under the microscope in this discussion. It's even called a billion-dollar industry, literally driven by envy.
Wow,
Yep.
that's quite a statement. It really makes you stop and think about how these platforms actually work, doesn't it? It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how they're set up. They basically encourage us to compare our lives,
Yeah.
right? Which often makes us want the things, the products, the lifestyles that other people show off. And at the same time, they reward us for sharing our own, perfectly polished highlight reels with likes and comments. So it creates this nonstop comparison cycle.
Yeah. And the question asked in the source, it's so simple, but wow, it hits hard. How often do you come off social media feeling just a little bit worse about yourself and your life than you did before you went on? Oh, that's a really, really important check-in for all of us, I think.
Absolutely. And there's this anecdote shared about a woman in a coaching session. She said she dreaded weekends because seeing everyone else's posts about parties and socializing just made her feel so isolated, so relatable. It just shows how these platforms can really poke at our deepest insecurities.
Even though it turned out she didn't actually want that kind of crazy social life, her ideal weekend was much quieter. It just shows how easily we can end up envying a life that isn't even what we truly want for ourselves. Our focus gets totally hijacked.
Precisely. Social media becomes, like the source says, this playground for comparison and a fertile land for envy to grow in. Just constant images of filtered perfection. The perfect bodies, the perfect homes, the perfect businesses, perfect holidays, perfect families. It's endless.
But it's so, so important to remember, and the discussion really hammers this home, that so much of it is staged, pre-planned, edited, airbrushed, and fine-tuned. It's the
Wow.
highlight reel,
Hmm.
right? Carefully crafted, not the messy reality. We see those like perfect selfies posted right after a massive argument, or the amazing holiday photos when actually it was kind of stressful. It's often an illusion.
And seeing that constantly, it can really mess with how we see ourselves, can it? It can definitely feed those feelings of not being good enough. The author even talks about their own um, toxic relationship with social media when they were feeling depressed, just constantly comparing and reinforcing that feeling of not enough. It becomes a vicious cycle.
That need for outside validation is just so strong sometimes, isn't it? The example given about wanting an invite to some big event like Fashion Week or something, and then feeling that familiar sting of envy when it doesn't happen, that on the outside looking in feeling. It really taps into that basic human need to belong, to be recognized.
It's a kind of mental self-sabotage, as
Yeah.
the source puts it. It draws a parallel with like more obvious self-destructive stuff. And the example of someone who just can't stop stalking their ex's new partner online. That perfectly shows how we sometimes actively seek out stuff we know is going to make us feel bad. It's almost compulsive.
Okay, so given how powerful social media is and all this, what are some, practical things we can do to use it maybe more healthily and dial down those envy triggers?
Yeah, good question. The discussion gives two main pieces of advice. First one is curate your feed, like actually take control of what you're seeing. Mute accounts or even unfollow them if they consistently make you feel bad or trigger that envy. And the cool thing is, it doesn't have to be forever, right? You can always unmute later if you feel differently. And just as importantly, actively follow accounts that genuinely inspire you or teach you something or just make you feel good.
That makes total sense. Be intentional about your digital space. Okay, and the second tip.
The second one is to scroll mindfully. So instead of just zoning out and passively consuming, try to be more present. Pay attention to how different posts actually make you feel. If something triggers envy, just notice it. Acknowledge the feeling without beating yourself up about it. And maybe ask yourself, okay, what specifically about this is getting to me? Instead of just letting that negativity sit there and, fester.
Good point. But it's also key to remember, like the source says, that envy isn't just about social media, is it? Sometimes those feelings hit even harder with people we're actually close to.
Oh, absolutely. That little twinge when a good friend shares amazing news like a surprise holiday or a big win, or even just when they seem really happy and confident. And sibling rivalry. That's a classic example, isn't it? Often about feeling like one got more attention or praise from parents. Those feelings can run really deep in our closest relationships.
And it can be so confusing, feeling envious of someone you genuinely love and care about. It brings up all this guilt and shame, which just makes it harder to deal with. And the discussion makes a really vital point here. Trying to just push that envy down or pretend it's not there, maybe, by telling yourself you just don't like them or what they have that can actually be worse in the long run.
Totally. Because denied envy doesn't just disappear. It often goes inwards, right? It
Yeah.
feeds our own insecurities, makes us feel worse about ourselves. And that can then subtly sabotage our own efforts to get what we want. The source even links unacknowledged envy to being more critical or judgmental of other people. So just acknowledging the feeling, even though it's uncomfortable, that's the first, most compassionate step toward understanding it and moving through it.
Okay, so how do we start doing that? How do we unpack envy in a way that's actually useful and maybe learn something about ourselves from it?
The key really is self-reflection. When you feel that envy pop up, instead of just focusing outwards on the other person and what they've got, try to gently turn your attention inwards. Ask yourself those kinds of probing questions the source suggests. Like instead of just thinking, oh, they're so arrogant, maybe ask, what is it about their confidence that's triggering something in me?
Hmm.
Or, instead of rolling your eyes at a couple being affectionate in public, maybe ask, am I only judging this because deep down I really wish I had that kind of connection in my life?
Wow. So envy can almost be like a compass then, pointing towards the bits of our own lives where we feel something's missing or where our unmet desires are hiding. That's actually a really powerful way to look at it, potentially quite liberating.
It really is.
Yeah.
But we often have such a strong negative reaction to the feeling of envy itself, don't we? The discussion talks about why that might be. It points to things like, those old stories we all grew up with, like Snow White and the super jealous queen.
Oh, yeah, totally. The evil stepmother, Scar and the Lion King, Jafar. The envious bad guy is everywhere in fairy tales and kids' movies. It's like we're almost wired from childhood to see envy as purely evil and destructive.
Exactly. So naturally, when we feel it ourselves, we often feel ashamed because we've learned to equate envy with being a bad person. But the discussion offers this really helpful reframe. Envy itself isn't inherently evil, it's just an emotion, a signal that pops up when something makes us question our own self-worth. And often it's not that dramatic green-eyed monster thing, it's more subtle, just that quiet, nagging feeling of not enough, which, again, often comes back to that scarcity mindset we talked about.
That fear, right? That if someone else succeeds or gets something great, it somehow means less for us. The example of a new business owner feeling envious of competitors, that really highlights that anxiety about there not being enough clients or opportunities to go around. It's less about wanting them to fail and more about feeling insecure yourself.
Precisely. And there's that anecdote about the new personal trainer. It's so revealing. She started out feeling inspired by others in her field, right? But then she got caught in this loop of comparing herself constantly, feeling envious, obsessing over what others were doing. And it all stemmed from this fear, this basic fear that she wouldn't get enough clients. Recognizing that connection, that the envy was really just fear in disguise, was the turning point for her.
Okay, so we're getting a much clearer handle on what envy is, what triggers it, why it feels so yucky sometimes. But the big question remains, how do we actually shift it? How do we take this understanding and actively turn envy into something useful? How do we make that switch to inspiration?
Well, if envy is often rooted in fear, in that sense of lack, like we've been saying, then those feelings can actually be really useful signposts. They can point us toward the limiting beliefs, the insecurities that might be holding us back. And the discussion really stresses that a huge part of letting go of envy involves working on those deeper fears and doubts. That ongoing work of building more self-acceptance and self-belief.
Right, but what about in the moment, when that envious feeling washes over you? What's a practical way to think differently right then and there?
That's where inspiration really comes into play. The source calls it the antithesis of envy, where envy comes from that low-energy place of scarcity. Inspiration is this higher energy feeling. It comes from believing in abundance. That initial panic you might feel when you're envious, that's often the fear that someone else's success somehow reduces your chances.
Gotcha. So it's like flipping the script entirely in your head. Instead of thinking, oh, great, they have that, which means I can't. The inspired thought is more like, wow, they have that. That shows me it's possible. How could I maybe work towards something similar for myself?
Exactly that. The example used people wanting a relationship, but feeling envious of their friends who are coupled up. That shows how the scarcity thinking can actually block you. The key is to consciously make that switch, to genuinely appreciate their happiness and see it as proof that love is possible, and feel excited about your own future relationship.
And that detailed scenario they painted, bumping into an old friend who's now super successful, that really brings it home. That first wave of reactions, the physical knot in your stomach, the emotional dip, the mental comparison game, totally understandable.
Totally.
But the real power move is choosing what happens next. Acknowledge the feeling, don't judge yourself for it, give yourself some compassion, and then actively choose an inspired thought like, okay, how did they build that career? What could I learn from their path?
And this isn't just about one-on-one stuff. The discussion also mentions how, society-level envy gets stirred up by media narratives that often focus on negativity, comparison, tearing people down. It almost normalizes being critical or judgmental, doesn't it?
Oh, totally. That whole tearing people down culture. And the source makes a great point about how draining gossip can be, especially when it's fueled by envy in group chats or whatever. That kind of low vibe energy really does zap your own sense of power, doesn't it?
It really does. Choosing instead to support people, to celebrate their wins, even when you feel a twinge yourself, that actually comes from a place of self-love. And it sends out this signal of abundance to yourself, to the universe, however you want to think about it. The advice is basically try to steer conversations away from that stuff, or just step away if you need to. Build people up, don't tear them down.
Okay, so building up is high vibe, tearing down is low vibe. Got it. So how can we actively use this inspired envy idea day to day to actually help us move towards our goals?
Well, turning envy into inspiration can really clarify what you want. Like suddenly you know exactly what to put on your vision board, or it makes your visualizations much richer. The example of wanting a winter wedding is great if you actually go to one. Your own vision becomes so much clearer, more real.
Ah, Okay.
And using social media mindfully, like we talked about. Seeing a restaurant that looks amazing, don't just feel bad you're not there, add it to your list. Saving pictures of holidays or home decor that you love, use them to visualize your future. It's all about shifting from "I don't have that" to "that inspires me." What possibility does that open up for me?
And that core belief in abundance just keeps coming back up, doesn't it? It seems absolutely crucial. When we let ourselves be genuinely inspired by what others achieve, we're basically saying, I believe there's enough success, enough joy, enough opportunity to go around.
Exactly. The author shares their own experience in the self-development world, which can be pretty competitive. They made a conscious choice to celebrate their colleagues' successes instead of feeling envious, and that directly led to the stronger belief that there were plenty of opportunities for everyone, including them.
Okay. Let's get down to brass tacks then. What are the actual actionable steps we can start taking, like right now, to practice this shift,
Yeah.
turning envy into inspiration?
Right. The discussion lays out a pretty clear four-step process. Step 1,
Mm,
become aware of it. Just start noticing your thoughts more. Catch that envy when it first pops up. Mindfulness, basically.
okay. Awareness first.
Step 2, remove the shame and judgment. Super important. Practice self-love. Be kind to yourself for feeling a normal human emotion. No judgment.
Be nice to yourself. Got it.
Step 3, learn from it. When you catch yourself judging someone, ask, okay, why am I feeling the need to judge this? What desire or insecurity is underneath this? Get curious.
Okay. Dig a little deeper.
And finally, step 4, turn envy into inspiration. Actively reframe it. See that moment of envy not as a negative thing, but as the chance to get clear on what you want and to feel inspired by what's possible.
I like that. Aware, compassionate, curious, inspired. And there's even that practical exercise suggested, right? Like actually sit down, write out recent things that triggered envy, and then consciously write down a new inspired perspective for each one. That sounds really concrete.
It's a great way to start retraining your brain, absolutely. And the discussion also makes another good point. Don't just wait for envy to strike and then transform it. Also be proactive. Actively seek out inspiration. Surround yourself with people, stories, examples that inspire you. It gives your subconscious mind, as they put it, proof that what you desire is actually achievable.
That makes so much sense. Like, if you want to start a sustainable clothing brand, go research successful ones. See that it can be done. Fill your mind with possibility.
Exactly. And finally, there's this powerful link drawn between envy and gratitude.
Ah, yes. Tell us about that.
Basically, they argue that envy and gratitude can't really live in the same space at the same time. It's hard to feel genuinely thankful for what you do have if you're busy resenting what someone else has. So practicing gratitude, consciously focusing on the good in your own life, naturally creates less room for envy to take root. It makes it easier to genuinely celebrate other people's wins without feeling like it takes away from you.
So it all seems to come back to that foundation, doesn't it? Self-love, self-acceptance.
Absolutely. That's really the core message at the end. The more self-compassion, the more self-acceptance, the more genuine self-love you can cultivate, the less power external comparisons have over you. Ultimately, it just leaves no room for envy to live.
Wow. Okay, so to wrap up this deep dive, we've really unpacked how envy, yeah, it's often uncomfortable, but it's also totally normal. And it can actually be this incredibly valuable signal pointing towards our desires. And crucially, it can be a powerful catalyst for positive change if we consciously choose to shift our view towards inspiration.
So now that you've got this deeper understanding of how envy and inspiration work, here's something to think about. What's maybe one specific area in your life where you could consciously choose to lean into inspiration this week instead of letting that first pang of envy take over?
Yeah, and maybe as you go through your week, notice those perfect lives you see online, offline, wherever, and ask yourself, what genuine inspiration can I take from this? Inspiration that focuses on my unique path, my real desires, not just comparison.
And maybe give that exercise a go, reflecting on those envy triggers and reframing them. Remember, understanding this whole dynamic, it's an ongoing journey, isn't it? A process of becoming more self-aware.
Definitely. Well, here's to choosing inspiration over envy, and to using even those tricky feelings as a guide towards creating the life you genuinely want. Until our next deep dive, keep exploring.